Welcome to the Catchpoint News Catch-Up. Now, if you've worked in tech for more than 15 minutes, you know the news moves faster than a well-tuned website loading LCP. This series will help you catch up with the headlines that matter, as well as provide both context and perspective, because, like your network, here at Catchpoint, we are highly opinionated. And joining me this week on our journey through the news is in alphabetical order. Actually, I like that layout better. There we go. We're going in alphabetical order. K is for knowledgeable, kindly, and kick-ass Kelly Avina. Welcome.
Thank you. So glad to be here. I feel like we are superheroes now with those introductions.
Right? It's you should dress and behave for the job you want, not the job you have. And I want to be Batman. Okay, next up is let's see, S for scintillating, sincere, and sagacious. Sergey Katsev. I'll learn to say that.
See, not a real word. Can't say it. It's not a real word, but great to be here.
It's wonderful. All right. I think what I'd like to do is just jump straight into the news. So, sagacious. That's it. Sagacious. Sergey, will you go ahead and kick us off?
Absolutely. So this week I chose one that maybe isn't so much news as it is something that I might as well have written. This article, Four Ways to Ship Smarter, Not Just Faster, is an
Mm-hmm.
author who went from QA to a development manager, software engineering manager. And I agree with literally every single sentence in this article. And so as I was reading it, I just felt like I had to talk about it. So she lists four different ways. She lists critical versus non-critical, right? Make sure you understand what is critical, what is not critical, because that will help you prioritize things. That aligns so well with a talk track I've had here at Catchpoint and in other places about shift wide, right? Some things you need to
Mm-hmm.
spend a lot of focus on. You need to really test before it goes out there. Other things, maybe it's okay to test in production, right? It's scary, but maybe it's okay. Then she talks about define what good enough is, right? Over engineering kills productivity. Perfect doesn't ship. All of these phrases that we all have, but it's so true. And it just bloats the maintenance cost if you have over engineered functionality. Then she talks about creating a culture of quality, the psychological safety, cross-functional conversations, blameless postmortems, things like that. The way I look at it is I want people to feel bad if they screw up and fail our customers. It doesn't mean that they need to dwell on it. It doesn't mean by any means that they need to feel like their job is on the line if they screwed up. But I want people who actually care. And so that's the kind of organization that I personally like to build. And then the last one I thought was just, relevant for Catchpoint, shall we say. She calls it lightweight quality gates. So I call it automate, automate, automate. And then she talks about for monitoring, monitoring is necessary to catch issues early without requiring exhaustive manual testing up front. Fast recovery is just as important as prevention. If something slips through, observability can serve as a safety net. So I think enough said on that one.
Nice. I so I read through it and I had a couple of thoughts which really come down to, first of all, I've said it before, I will again, I am not a good programmer. In fact, the most complimentary thing anyone has ever said about code I've written is it ran. That's it. So I I love this advice. I love this as a framework of how to structure the things that I'm doing to become a better programmer. What I find is missing a lot of times is okay, you need to use, CI/CD, you have to have automation. But what's lacking is the concrete, actionable go here to learn how to do this if this is completely new to you. As an example, I have heard developer friends talk about unit tests for a really long time, and I recognize how important they are. I've never done one. I just never, until this last week when I realized, I should try that. It is really hard to just even get your environment set up for unit tests if you've never done them before, if you don't have a human sitting next to you saying do this or
Mhm.
that, and not let alone taking your code and realizing, oh, I have this big huge honking PHP file and now I have to separate it out into a function file so that I can actually do like even once you get to that, that's a whole other thing. So my question to you, like, this is a great article, but where do I go for the I want to do some of this now?
It's interesting. I think it goes to the fact that with AI, jazz hands, and all of the changes in the industry in the last couple of years, culture is becoming so much more important than the sort of call it hard facts, like how do you write a unit test, right? I can go and learn how to write a unit test by reading an article or watching, taking a class or sitting down with another developer for an hour. I won't learn how to hold myself accountable or how to coordinate dependencies across an organization by doing that. So I think that this really kind of helps set up for me that call it cultural framework to make a
Right.
well-performing engineering organization.
Nice. Kelly, I'm sure you have thoughts about this.
Well, I really like the article. I love all the points that she makes in it, and I think this is a good article for anyone in product development. I mean, from product all the way through to engineering and QA. Everybody needs to consider these things because I mean, yes, well, the fourth point about the automation maybe doesn't hit so directly to product because we aren't part of that process. I mean, we can be, right? We can think about the test cases that have to be thought through. But everything else is something that every aspect of product development needs to consider. And I really liked in the third bullet the creating a culture of quality. I really like how she talks about ownership. That she saw a shift in delivery from the team when the entire team took ownership. There wasn't finger pointing. There wasn't a, well, that's QA's problem. We're going to let them worry about it. It was this is something that we are all responsible for,
Yep,
and we are all going to be responsible for it. And we are all going to go all in on it.
exactly. And for anyone who might follow my various webinars, I've been trying to coin the phrase OSDLC, observable SDLC, where I've talked in other places about how uh, the SDLC, kind of like that DevOps loop, uh, the infinity loop, involves everybody, right? It involves product managers, it involves QA, it involves the business stakeholders, it involves the actual users. And so building observability, and in this case, or as she talks about quality in, really does involve all of the different stakeholders.
Nice.
Right.
Okay, we ready for the next one?
Let's do it.
Okay, so this is actually a Let's Encrypt love story in two parts. So part one comes from ZDNet, July 7th, how Let's Encrypt made the internet safer and the HTTPS standard, and HTTPS standard, standardizing it, and also free. So a lot of this article is really just the authors look back at how hard it was and expensive it was to get an SSL certificate back in the day. And by the day, I mean 1996. So we're really talking back in the day. It was a pain. It was expensive, like $1,500 a year for for an SSL certificate, and also not many people did it. In the article, he cites research from 2015. So we're only going back now 10 years, which in 2015, only 6.7% of the top million websites, the million most popular websites, 6.7% had HTTPS turned on. So it really, and the reason for that was that it was difficult. A lot of hosting providers didn't support it or didn't support it easily, and it was expensive. It was just one more cost. And, even in the late teens, it was probably a couple $100 a year to get a security certificate, and if you weren't selling anything, there was really no compelling reason to do it. And that was the superhero origin story for Let's Encrypt. It took a few years after they launched in 2014 to get the ecosystem working where every browser would accept it and all that stuff. But now it is so much the de facto standard that within most organizations you have to create a compelling argument why you won't just use Let's Encrypt along the way. That's the first one. The second article, let me find my mouse. There we go. Let's Encrypt. This is newer. Although it's from July 3rd. Let's Encrypt rolls out free security certificates for IP addresses. So the headline makes the content of the article relatively clear. Just like you get a certificate for a domain name, now you can get one for your IP address. What's less clear until you read the article is why you might want one. And so I'm not going to read the whole article to you, obviously, but top 3 bullet points of why you might want a cert for your IP is that, first of all, you have a really memorable IP address like 1.1.1.1 or 8.8.8.8 or 12.12.12.12, which it belongs to Cloudflare or Google or some obscure ASN within the AT&T network in Atlanta, respectively. So that's the first one, is that you have an IP address that you really like and you want a certificate for it. Second of all, you might want it as an extra layer of security when accessing specific equipment like your home NAS. You might want an IP address dedicated to that and have a certificate to make sure that it is a secure access. That is a thing that people do. And finally, if you really, really want people to connect to the IP address and you don't want to have to maintain a domain name, I'm not sure this is a compelling argument or just proof of your own sort of need for therapy. You could do that securely. I think riding above all this is a more important point, which is that the IP certificate is going to expire every 6 days, which points to what's happening within the regular certificates. And that is that right now, security certificates expire every 398 days, leading to an unknown number of websites that just mysteriously go dark for a little bit because they forgot to renew their certificate. No, my God! And then they have to go make some phone calls and get some money or do some renewals or all that stuff. In March 15th of 2026, that number will reduce to 200 days. It will expire every 200 days. Then a year later, in 2027, same day, March 15th, it's going to reduce down to 100 days. And finally, 2 years after that, March 15th, 2029, certificate lifespans will be a meager 47 days. And DCVs, domain control validations, will be just 10 days. So there's this shift to shorter and shorter and shorter expiration dates, and that's so that it can't be spoofed as easily. But also, all of these articles really just point to the fact that certificates are important, but they also have to be managed and they have to be monitored. And yes, that's a commercial, but it really is a thing, because the number of times that you see a website go dark and you realize it's because they let their cert expire is a non-zero number that's probably in double, if not triple digits per year.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. So much. Kelly, you want to go first or should I?
Um, Given my limited background in tech, the only real thing that I kind of took away from this was the more that I learn about the history of the internet, I find it very cool that people get together and say, we want to make it safer and we need to figure out a way to make it safer. And that's how, from what I
Yeah.
gathered, right, that's how kind of Let's Encrypt became a thing. And I mean, I think that's cool. But that really was my takeaway. So
Yeah.
I will let you go through your list of things.
Well, so I guess I have three main points. So, point number one, yes, I think it's great that security is being wrapped into all of these other protocols that aren't just HTTP, right? I think most people know about HTTP and HTTPS. Well, there's a secure version of DNS. There's a secure version, obviously, secure shell. There's BGP has security wrapped around it. Basically, every protocol nowadays has a secure version, and that's for very good reasons. All of these security controls provide yes, they do the authentication piece that Leon was talking about that maybe an e-commerce company might want, but they also provide confidentiality, and probably most importantly, they provide non-repudiation. Big fancy word. It means if you did something, I know it was you that did that thing.
Right.
And so those are the main things that SSL provides. So yeah, why don't we sprinkle it all around the internet? And then my last bit is this is going to break the internet. And what I mean by that is,
Yay!
and what I mean by that is, we have customers who are monitoring thousands of SSL certificates because they have, every different system that you run probably has one or more certificates associated with it. A lot of companies, particularly large companies, can't move fast enough to create all of this automation. And Let's Encrypt, for now, a lot of people use it, but a lot of people don't. And Let's Encrypt has the best automation out there. But if you're not going to automate this, having certificates expire every 47 days is frankly pretty scary. Things are
Yeah,
Oh,
going to break.
let's be clear. This is
right.
not a Let's Encrypt thing. Let's
Oh,
Encrypt is not
I know.
saying we
There are
want it.
huge
It is
companies that want this. Yep.
the the internet, like
Yep.
the I don't know if it was the IETF or whoever it was, but
I think
this is
Apple,
happening
if I'm not mistaken,
industry
is
wide.
one of the big industry pushers of this. And I agree it's necessary,
I thought it was
but
Google.
there's going to be some growing pains. Maybe it's
Oh,
Google. I'm not
absolutely,
sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I there's big pushes for it, but just to be clear for everyone who's listening, this is industry wide. This is not one company saying we're going to make your life miserable. Ha! Like no, this is happening everywhere. But
Yep.
yeah, it is absolutely going to cause a lot of frustration and struggle. The good news is that from the jump from 398 days to 398, 389, whatever it is, 398 days. The jump from 398 to 200 is not so bad. So and then you jump from 200 to 100. So you really have from today until 2027 until things start to get really squirrely. 100 days is, a little bit more than 3 months is when you suddenly are looking at a much higher, duty cycle in terms of that automation you talked about. So people have 2 years to really start to test this out and try it out. And
Yep.
then it's not until 2029, so 4 years from now, that the fecal matter hits the oscillating blade. So yeah, that's good stuff. Okay, last article of the day. Kelly, tell us what you got.
All right. So my article was. This article is more just a kind of a recap of a previous ruling. So the U.S. Appeals Court blocked a previous rule that the FTC had put in place last October, which was the click to cancel rule for subscriptions, which would have made companies require that their cancellation process of a subscription is as easy as the sign up process. Now, this article gets a little political and says, that that the FTC from the previous administration put the rule in place and now it's a different administration. And, that's kind of why the rule was blocked. But regardless, I think the rule is actually, and coming from a company that has a subscription service, right? We have web page tests. I actually think that the rule for click to cancel is a good thing. And a lot of, as much as I don't like studies, a lot of studies show that if you make things easier for customers, they are more willing to come back to you, right? So if you are going to make the process difficult, it is going to remain in their minds, and they are going to find another service. They're going to be pissed off at you. So if you make it easy for them to cancel, they're going to remember that, and when they need that service again, they are going to think about coming back to you. There was one other little thing in the rule that also see, required businesses to obtain consent before charging customers for memberships, auto renewals, or programs tied to free trial offers. Which again, I think is also a good thing. So
Transparency.
I actually agree with this FTC rule. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I all I can say about this is this sucks. This is part of an ongoing removal, as Cory Doctorow would say, the enshittification of everything. And I'm not bleeping that out later. So note to the editor, who is me. It's just this is one more bad customer experience that is being allowed to persist, and I hate it. And if I said anything more, this would become a politics podcast, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I agree with everything you said, Kelly, right? How many of us have attempted to cancel a membership at a gym, let's say? To me, that's kind of the poster child for bad cancellation experience, right? It's miserable. They make you come in, they make
Mhm.
you swear up and down that you're moving or something. They make it very, very difficult. And they put a sour taste in your mouth that makes you never want to go back. If it was easy to cancel, you know,
Right.
come back a year later, no problem. Yeah, and then from a technology standpoint, probably my favorite feature of Gmail is that button that pops up on top that says, "Hey, you haven't opened email from this sender in a while. Would you like to unsubscribe?" And it's just one click unsubscribe. I really want more of the internet
Yeah.
to work like that, and this is going in the wrong direction.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
All right. Well, that was a good round of news for the week. I appreciate, as always, both of you and everybody, Brandon and Payal and everybody showing up. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to take just another minute to thank my co hosts as well as Catchpoint for giving us space to do fun things like this show. I also want to thank the news cycle itself for providing a never ending source of education, intrigue, amusement, and horror. But most of all, I'd like to thank everyone watching or listening. Here at Catchpoint, we recognize there's an almost infinite amount of content that you can consume, and we really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to listen to us. Thank you again. For Catchpoint News Catch Up, I'm Leon Adato.